A 9-year-old boy named Tommy is curled up, sleeping on a hospital bench, wearing his dad's oversized hoodie like a blanket, clutching his little backpack with superhero patches, and a woman in a hot pink velour tracksuit marches up to security, demanding they remove the vagrant child, making the hospital entrance look bad. But what she didn't know was that Tommy had been there for 11 hours, waiting for his single father to be released from emergency surgery after a car accident. And when the truth came out, that entitled woman's face went from indignant to mortified so fast she literally stumbled backward in her designer sneakers. So, let me take you back to 3 o'clock in the afternoon at St. Mary's Medical Center, when this whole heartbreaking and ultimately karma-filled story began. Tommy Chen is a 3rd grader, 9 years old, barely 4 feet tall, and he lives alone with his dad, David, who works 2 jobs to support them after Tommy's mom left when he was just a baby. That morning, David was driving Tommy to school when a truck ran a red light and T-boned their old Honda, and while Tommy only got minor scratches because he was in his booster seat, David took the full impact on the driver's side and had to be rushed into emergency surgery for internal bleeding and a fractured pelvis. The school was called. Tommy was checked out by paramedics and cleared. But here's the heartbreaking part. When the social worker asked Tommy if there was anyone else they could call, any other family member who could pick him up, Tommy just shook his head because David's parents are back in Taiwan. Tommy's mom hasn't been in contact for 8 years, and David's brother lives in Seattle and is deployed in the Navy. So, the hospital staff, doing the best they could during a chaotic shift, told Tommy he could wait in the family waiting room until his dad got out of surgery. And Tommy, being a brave little 9-year-old who'd already seen more hardship than most adults, just nodded and said he'd wait. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to HOA Karen Tales for more wild Karen stories. By 3:00 p.m., Tommy had been waiting for 6 hours already. He'd eaten the crackers from his backpack and drank water from the fountain. And he kept asking the nurses, "Is my dad okay? When can I see my dad?" And they kept saying, "Soon, honey. The surgery is taking a little longer than expected, but he's doing fine." Tommy eventually wandered outside to the main entrance because the waiting room was too loud with other families crying and talking. And he found this green wooden bench under the covered entrance overhang where he could sit and watch the doors, hoping to see his dad walk out. He was exhausted from the shock and the fear and the waiting, wearing his dad's huge gray hoodie that David had thrown over him in the ambulance to keep him warm. And at some point around 5 p.m., with the sun starting to set and the air getting chilly, Tommy just curled up on that bench using his little blue backpack as a pillow and fell asleep. He's just a tiny kid, legs pulled up to his chest, swimming in that oversized hoodie, mismatched socks peeking out because 9-year-olds don't think about matching socks when their dad is in surgery. And he looks exactly like what he is, a scared child waiting for the only parent he has. Fast forward to 6:30 p.m., the sun has set, the temperature has dropped, and Linda Harrington pulls up to the hospital entrance in her Mercedes SUV because she's there to visit her sister, who just had elective cosmetic surgery that afternoon. Linda is 50 years old, lives in a gated community, has never worked a day in her life because she married money, and spends her time doing hot yoga, getting her nails done, and complaining about things on community Facebook groups. She's wearing this eye-searing hot pink velour tracksuit like she thinks she's a real housewife. Her orange copper hair is teased to maximum volume with a leopard print headband, and she's carrying a leopard print designer purse that probably cost more than David's monthly rent. Linda parks in the drop-off zone, steps out of her car, and immediately sees Tommy sleeping on the bench. And instead of thinking, "Oh, that poor child, I wonder if he's okay," her first thought is literally, "This makes the hospital look bad. Why would they allow homeless people to sleep here?" She doesn't see a child. She sees an inconvenience, something that offends her aesthetic sensibilities. So, Linda, with her coral lips pursed in disgust and her tortoiseshell Katy glasses perched on her nose, marches right past Tommy into the hospital entrance and demands to speak to security. Officer Rodriguez, the security guard who's been working at St. Mary's for 15 years and has seen everything, comes over, and Linda immediately starts her complaint. "There is a vagrant child sleeping on your bench outside. It's completely inappropriate. Families are coming here during difficult times, and they don't need to see that. You need to remove him immediately before I call the police." Officer Rodriguez, a father of 3 himself, asks calmly, "Ma'am, what child are you referring to?" And Linda waves her beringed hand toward the door dramatically. "The homeless boy in the filthy clothes, sleeping on the bench. He's been there for who knows how long, probably waiting to steal from people's cars or beg for money." Officer Rodriguez's expression immediately hardens because he actually knows Tommy. He's seen this brave little kid sitting in that same spot for hours, checking on him periodically, bringing him warm apple juice from the cafeteria. And he is not about to let this woman in her ridiculous pink tracksuit talk about Tommy like he's garbage. "Ma'am," Rodriguez says, his voice now firm and protective, "that vagrant child is 9-year-old Tommy Chen, and he's been here since 8 this morning waiting for his father David Chen, who is currently in post-op recovery after emergency surgery from a car accident. He has nowhere else to go and no other family to call, and he fell asleep because he's an exhausted child who's been through a traumatic day." If you're enjoying this, hit that like button and share this video to support HOA Karen Tales. Linda's face flickers with something that might be shame for about half a second, but then her entitlement kicks back in and she says, "Well, that's very sad, but surely there are social services. There are proper places for children in his situation. He shouldn't be sleeping on a public bench where anyone can see him. It's disturbing to visitors." And that's when Kesha, a young nurse who's been listening to this conversation while restocking the hand sanitizer station, turns around and says loudly enough for the whole lobby to hear, "What's disturbing is that you think a child waiting for his father is a problem because of how it looks. Have you no humanity?" Other people in the lobby are starting to pay attention now. Visitors and staff alike are turning to see what's happening. And Mrs. Beatrice Wong, a 72-year-old hospital volunteer who's been here for 20 years, walks over and says directly to Linda, "That little boy has been here all day. He's been polite to every single person. He hasn't complained once. He asked me if his daddy was going to die, and I had to tell him I didn't know. And you want him removed because he's sleeping? Shame on you." Linda's face is turning red now, not from embarrassment yet, but from anger, because she's not used to being challenged. And she says, "I'm simply saying there are appearances to maintain. This is a reputable hospital." But she's cut off by Officer Rodriguez, who's had enough. "Ma'am, that child's father almost died today. Tommy has been brave beyond his years. And the only thing inappropriate here is you suggesting we treat a traumatized 9-year-old like he's some kind of pest. Now, I'm going to ask you to either go visit whoever you came here to see, or leave the premises, because I'm done with this conversation." Linda huffs, adjusts her leopard print purse, and says, "Fine, but I'm reporting this to hospital administration. You'll be hearing about this." And she clicks away in her pink accented sneakers toward the elevators. Meanwhile, outside on that green bench, Tommy is waking up because it's getting really cold now, and he's shivering in the oversized hoodie. And he sits up, rubbing his eyes, his hair sticking up in every direction. And he sees Officer Rodriguez coming toward him with a warm hospital blanket, and says in the smallest voice, "Is my dad out yet? Can I see him?" Rodriguez kneels down, wraps the blanket around Tommy's tiny shoulders, and says, "Your dad's out of surgery, buddy. He's doing great, and they're moving him to a room right now. You can see him in about 20 minutes. And Tommy's whole face lights up with relief so pure it could break your heart. Rodriguez stays with Tommy, sits right there on the bench with him. And about 15 minutes later, a nurse comes out and says, "Tommy, your dad's asking for you." And Tommy jumps up so fast he almost drops his backpack. And Rodriguez walks him inside to the elevators. Want to hear the craziest HOA tales every week? Subscribe to HOA Karen Tales and never miss out. They take the elevator to the 4th floor, walk down the hall to room 418, and there's David Chen in a hospital bed, pale and bandaged and hooked up to monitors, but alive and conscious. And the second he sees Tommy, his eyes fill with tears, and he opens his arms. And Tommy runs to him crying, "Dad, Dad, I was so scared." And David just holds his son with his good arm and whispers, "I'm okay. I'm surgery," and barely knew Linda was there. And she's heading back through the lobby when she sees a small crowd gathered near the entrance. And her nosiness gets the better of her, so she walks over to see what's happening. What she sees stops her cold. Tommy is being escorted back down by Officer Rodriguez. Kesha, the nurse, gives him a chocolate pudding cup from the cafeteria, and Mrs. Beatrice gives him a stuffed animal from the gift shop. And everyone is treating this little boy with such kindness and respect that Linda suddenly sees him differently, not as an inconvenience or a vagrant, but as a real child who survived something terrible. Tommy, with his gap-toothed smile, and his dad's huge hoodie and his blue superhero backpack, waves goodbye to everyone and heads back upstairs. And Linda just stands there watching. And you can literally see the exact moment the shame hits her because her expression crumbles. She approaches Officer Rodriguez, who's filling out paperwork at the security desk, and she says quietly, "I need to apologize. I was wrong. I said terrible things about that little boy, and I didn't understand the situation." Rodriguez looks up, and instead of being gracious, he says bluntly, "Ma'am, the situation shouldn't have mattered. That was a child sleeping on a bench. Your first thought should have been concern, not complaint. And the fact that you only feel bad now after seeing everyone else be kind to him tells me you still don't really get it." Linda's face goes white because he's absolutely right, and she stammers, "Can I do something for them? Can I pay for his father's hospital bills or—" And Rodriguez cuts her off again. "They don't need your money, ma'am. They need people to see them as human beings first before making judgments. That's what they need." Linda nods, tears now running down her overly bronzed face, smudging her mascara, and she leaves without another word. But here's where the story gets its beautiful resolution. The hospital social worker, after hearing about Tommy's situation, connects David with a local community organization that helps single parents, and within a week, David has volunteers offering to help with Tommy's after-school care during his recovery. Neighbors bringing meals, and even a GoFundMe organized by hospital staff that raises enough money to cover David's lost wages and buy Tommy a proper winter coat. Officer Rodriguez becomes a regular visitor, checking on Tommy and David, bringing coloring books and comics for Tommy, and becoming like an uncle figure. Mrs. Beatrice organizes a toy drive through her church specifically for Tommy's upcoming birthday. And Kesha, the nurse, stays in touch, inviting Tommy to the hospital's annual Family Day event. And Linda tries to send a gift basket to David's hospital room, but he returns it with a polite note saying, "Please donate to families who need it more," and she does, quietly donating $5,000 to the hospital's Emergency Family Support Fund, not for recognition, but because she genuinely learned something. 3 months later, Linda sees Tommy and David at the grocery store. Tommy riding in the cart, even though he's technically too big because his dad's still recovering and walking slowly. And instead of looking away or pretending she doesn't see them, Linda approaches and says to Tommy directly, "I'm sorry I judged your situation without knowing your story. You're a very brave boy, and your dad is lucky to have you." And Tommy, because kids are remarkably forgiving, just says, "Thank you," and shows her the new backpack he got with dinosaurs on it. David shakes Linda's hand, nods in acceptance of her apology, and they part ways. And Linda walks to her car and sits there for 10 minutes, just thinking about how close she came to being the villain in a child's worst day, and how much she still has to learn about basic human compassion. Thanks for watching HOA Karen Tales, where every Karen story has a twist. Like, share, and subscribe for more drama from the neighborhood. The moral here is painfully simple, but apparently needs repeating. When you see someone in a vulnerable situation, especially a child, your first response should be concern and compassion, not complaint and judgment, because you have absolutely no idea what battles people are fighting, what traumas they're surviving, or what strength it's taking them just to get through the day. And a sleeping child on a bench isn't a problem to be removed. It's a human being deserving of dignity, kindness, and the benefit of the doubt. And if your instinct is to call security before offering help, then the problem isn't the person on the bench. The problem is you. And Linda Harrington learned that lesson the hard way in front of witnesses, with her hot pink tracksuit and her leopard print accessories and all her privilege on full display. And maybe that public shame was exactly what she needed to become a better person.